Good morning. Today, as we look at 2 Kings, we'll be looking at chapters 10 through 12. On our church calendar, today is Ascension Day. It's the day held within the church year as we read through the Gospels and through the book of Acts that it would be on this day that, after the resurrection, Jesus had spent time with his disciples. But it was on this day, so many, after the resurrection that he ascended into heaven for the final time. I mean, he had ascended, after the resurrection, but then he had come back down and had spent these days living again on the earth as a man, as a resurrected man, but then rose back up into heaven, and we wait. We still continue to wait and watch for his return again. As we look at 2 Kings again, so much of this is just heartbreaking. But partly because of the lack of following God, and then because of that they don't follow God, then the punishment that comes, and the murders, the killings, and so that's. Chapter 10 begins, it says, now Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. And, this may be sons and grandsons. To have 70 sons, you've got a lot of wives, or even if you've got 70 sons and grandsons, it's a tremendous number. But Jehu, who is, we found, he talked about him as being, the king, one of the kings, or, king of the other kingdom, comes and he asks the elders, who are you faithful to? And, because he wants to fulfill what the prophet Elijah had said with the killing of Ahab, the ending of Ahab's line. Maybe that's putting it more politely than killing them all. I don't know. But they gather up all of these 70 sons and 70 persons, and they slaughter them all, and it's just gruesome. But like verse 12, he set out and they went to Samaria. Verse 11, it ends with Jehu killed all who were left in the house of Ahab, all the leaders, close friends, and he left no survivors. And it's just, you just got to shake your head. It's all you can do, and I guess to understand that they're trying to get rid of those who are unfaithful, those who are pulling away from God. So then Jehu sets out, and Jehu was faithful to God for the most part, but he's not completely either. But Jehu then goes, he meets with the relatives of King Ahaziah of Judah, and then he takes all of these people alive, to take them alive. Well, why? And then they take them somewhere, and then they kill all of them, 42 of them. And it's in a way it's a cleansing, but it just hurts, to think that this is what it comes down to. And then I think about, well, what would happen if there was to be a cleansing today of within the world of all of those who worship false gods and different things like that. It's just horrible to think about that. But then verse 18 of chapter 10, Jehu assembles all the people and talks to him. He says, Ahab offered Baal small service, and he, and because Ahab was leading the people in their worship of Baal. And so Jehu says he's going to have a great celebration to the god Baal. And they invite all of the followers, anybody and everybody who believes in Baal. They want them all to come. And they filled the temple of Baal, wall to wall, people standing there, no more room for anybody. But it's all a false pretense. He gives us all of these together, these worshipers of this false god. And then he has them all killed because they're worshiping the false god. And again, it tells us as you read in here that this is to fulfill what the prophet Elijah said. The worshipers of Baal, these worshipers of these false gods, were to be destroyed, and so they all are, and he destroys the temple, and verse 28 says, then Jehu wiped out Baal from Israel, but so even though he wiped out Baal, here's the problem: he did not turn aside from the sins of Jeroboam, and so he wasn't completely faithful. But in verse 30, the Lord says, because you have done well in carrying it all out, your sons of the fourth generation will sit on the throne of Israel. Next verse, but Jehu was not careful to follow the law of God with all of his heart. And, and so what we're seeing in these chapters, in like chapter 10, 11, and 12 is the decline of Israel, the decline of Judah. Some of the lands are being taken over by other kings and other countries, and more, they're falling away from God. And it's, it just, how many times do we read, he was not faithful to God in his calling. Then chapter 11, now when Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother. So she comes in and she's going to reign, but she's not a good woman either, and she wants to kill all of the sons of Ahaziah, all of those king's children. But one of them, someone takes him and hides him away for 6 years. And then here he is, 7 years old, and they bring him out and they install him as king. And can you imagine a 7-year-old knowing how to be king? Well, it says we're reconnected. That's just one of those glitches. But so they bring this young boy out to be king, and of course, he hasn't got the experience, the knowledge, or anything that way to be king. But the priest Jehoiada brought him out. And so, this priest is the one that, for many years was really the power behind the throne. And this young boy who became the king at age 7, Joash, he reigned for, 40 years, I think it says. But, many of those years to begin with, he was under the guidance of this priest and others as well. But as we go through chapter 11, you get to verse 13, they've crowned this 7-year-old boy as king. And he's standing behind the throne, and they've got the crown on him, and they're cheering and chanting, long live the king. And Athaliah, the one who has been ruling, the queen, hears all this commotion and comes to see what's going on and cries out, treason, treason. However, they arrest her and they put her to death and anyone who follows her. And because, again, she hasn't been faithful in leading the people of Israel in a godly manner. And, and then it talks about Jehoiada making a covenant between the Lord and the king's people, that they would be the Lord's people. And so this priest does his very best to lead the people back to a faithful relationship with God. And so it's in there, then we look and that Joash takes his seat on the throne. And it says he was 7 years old when he began to reign. And it was in the 7th year of Jehu that but he reigned those for 40 years then. And, but they didn't destroy all of the high places of worship. So people continued to go out and offer sacrifices and do things that weren't according to what the Lord would have. And it was during this time too that this king, wanted the temple rebuilt and brought back to its glory. And the monies were to go to that, but the priests weren't faithful in their calling of that. So that, they were, not doing as they were supposed to. So he makes a special box and for the donations that come, and then that money is given directly to the carpenters, to the stonemasons. So some of the temple is restored, but there's not enough funds to bring back the ornate, like the silver candelabra, the different things that way. But this king, under the guidance of a faithful priest, tries to rule fairly and honorably for the people and of God. But again, they rise up. Verse 20 of chapter 12, where we've kind of finished. His servants arose, devised a conspiracy, and killed King Joash. And even when you get somebody that's trying to do right, I mean, it's one of those sad things. You get somebody that's trying to do right, and somebody isn't happy, and it's just that age-old thing of each person doing what they think is right, rather than trying to do the right for all people. So as we continue to read through Kings, and then when we get to Chronicles, I mean, it's the history, and it's the story of how Israel comes to prominence, how Israel fails, but through it all, again, as I've said before, and I'll say again, God is faithful to his people.